Face of the NBA. A label that has become extremely relevant recently because of the aging legends that this league will sadly lose. But this is a term that holds the most weight in the sport due to the burden that athlete carries on their shoulders every time they clock in for work. And this responsibility cannot be thrown onto just any player. They have to earn or take it from the ones that came before them. Every decade or so, the NBA goes through a phase where that exact thing happens. A young star begins to dominate, win championships, and ultimately take that title away. We saw this happen with Michael Jordan in the 90s, Kobe Bryant in the mid-2000s, then LeBron James in the 2010s. But now, there's a transitional period going on in the league, and the NBA is desperate for that next guy to step up. But who's it going to be? I want to take a deep look at the past faces of the NBA, the transitions between each of them, who might be next in line, and what they have to do to garner that label. The biggest responsibility a player can hold in this league, but who's ready for that next step, and what does this future look like for the NBA? Well, it's no secret that today's league is the most talented the game has ever seen. Whether it's superstars, all-stars, or even role and bench players, every guy that steps on the court today have elite level skills that this league has never seen at this magnitude. But even with all this, there's still been heavy discussion on who the next face of the NBA is after LeBron, Curry, and KD retire. We have young guys like Shea, Anthony Edwards, Luka, Tatum, and Wemby, or even somewhat older stars like Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. All these players rightfully deserve to be in these conversations, but the transition to being the face of the association comes naturally, and that next star takes away that title from the other greats. It's never given. And the NBA has been blessed with some of the biggest athletes to ever live go through their history books, but to even dissect this entire chain of greats, we have to go all the way back to where it all started, in the 1950s. During the founding years of the NBA, the league went through a lot of expansion and moving of organizations during the late 40s and early 50s. There wasn't a consistent number of teams for over 20 years, but the league was still star-studded during these early parts of operations. Guys like Bob Cousy, Bob Pettit, and George Mikan led the way early on for a league and a sport that was seen as, quote, the bottom of the totem pole. But in 1950, the Celtics drafted Chuck Cooper, the NBA's first black player to ever get drafted. This broke the racial barrier in professional basketball during the Civil Rights Movement, and opened the door for some of the next faces of the NBA in the late 50s to the 60s, Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. The NBA at this time started to get some traction, and with the 24-second shot clock being implemented in 1954, players started to develop unique skill sets that was appealing to new fans to grow the game. But not many players saw championship success in this era because of how dominant Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics were. Russell, the most decorated player in basketball history, led the Celtics to 11 championships from 1957 to 1969, including an 8-peat from 59 to 66, won 5 MVPs, led the league in rebounding 5 times, and eventually player-coached the team to multiple titles as well. But throughout his dominance, other superstars climbed the totem pole and made a name for themselves as well. One of them being arguably the greatest offensive player ever, Wilt Chamberlain. Chamberlain put up numbers that to this day don't sound real, and many still question whether or not he even accomplished certain things. In 1960, he became the first of 2 players in history to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season, but this is only scratching the surface. Everyone knows about his 100-point game that happened against the Knicks in 1962. There is very limited footage of this event, and people wonder if he even did it, but there are so many accounts of players and people who actually witnessed it.
Ladies and gentlemen, sports history is made here this week, Hershey, Pennsylvania, in a game in which Wilt Chamberlain threw in 36 field goals, 28 fouls for a total of 100 points.
Wilt begins now to build this Everest. You know, he's going to be at 41 points at the half, 13 of them from the free throw line. So something big is going on here, but you still don't know how big.
I stop dribbling and I hold the ball, and I see Wilt moving around, and he says, "Oh," and he puts his hands like this.
after he scored, he ran back to be on defense. By the time he got in front of midcourt, the fans had already started coming out on the court.
And the rest of his records are almost crazy to even read out loud. Among the 40-plus records that Wilt still holds to this day, he averaged the most points in the season with 50.4 in 1961 and holds the next 3 spots below himself. He has a record for most total points in the season with 4,029 in 1961 and has the second highest total as well in 1962. He scored 50 points 45 times in one season and 40 points 63 that same year, both being a record. He has more career 60, 50, 40, and 35-point games than anyone. And he holds the most consecutive 60-point games with 4 straight, 50-point games with 7 straight, 40-point games with 14 straight, and the most consecutive 30-point games with 65 straight. I could go on and on about some of these records because they get kind of crazy, but all of this actually happened, and the way other people who lived through these times talk about them, it's clear that these feats will never be done again. But being the face of the NBA was more than just on the court. These black athletes became social icons and heroes to many as they identified with people going through similar situations when it came to racism. They were symbols of achievement in the black community and broke a barrier that many saw as impossible during a time of racial discrepancy. Their marketability was off the charts at the time too. Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were seen in numerous advertisements with companies like Miller Lite, Budweiser, and Volkswagen. Their personalities off the court helped push their superstardom over the top of the other great players, and was one of the main reasons the NBA was able to grow and expand to over 20 teams in the 70s. These legends paved the way for this next set of superstars, who took over the 1970s and changed basketball forever. With basketball becoming more popular during this time, athletes began to express their own style of play outside of the NBA and on the streets. Street ball was making its waves around the country, with famous spots like Rucker Park and the West 4th Street courts in New York leading the way. This flashy and exciting style of play inked its way into the NBA with players like Earl Monroe, Nate "Tiny" Archibald, and many others. But no greater street ball style player than Dr. J. After a few years in the ABA with the Virginia Squires, Julius Erving began his NBA career on the Sixers after an ABA-NBA merger and immediately made himself a household name. His athleticism and smoothness with the ball was something that had never been seen in the league, and this helped push him to become an ideal ambassador for the game of basketball. His former coach Billy Cunningham said, Erving understood what his role was and how important it was for him to conduct himself as a representative of the league. He was the first player I ever remember who transcended sports and was known by one name, Doctor. Every night, Dr. J did something spectacular on the court. He was always doing something new, which made nearly every basketball fan tune into his games. But in 1976, with the ABA ending due to payroll demands, Julius Erving participated in the league's first All-Star Game Slam Dunk Championship, and of course, he put on a show.
And the winner, Julius Erving.
That infamous red, white, and blue basketball will forever be linked to Dr. J, and this helped catapult him into global superstardom. This same season, he became the first player to sign a lucrative shoe deal with Converse worth $25,000 a year and debuted the Converse Pro Leather, further expanding his stardom. But after this season, with the ABA officially ending, the NBA needed to keep Erving, and in order for that to happen, they had to take the remaining teams from the deleted league. So the Nets, Spurs, Nuggets, and Pacers were implemented into the NBA, all to keep Dr. J. But a contract disagreement between the 3-time MVP and the New York Nets arose, and he was traded to the 76ers a day before the start of the season. Dr. J's Philly era and 80s run was full of success. He won an MVP and made the finals 4 times with 1 championship. Every matchup against the other face of the NBA from the West Coast, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. While Julius Erving took over the spotlight because of his innovation with his street ball style of play, Kareem took over a different side of basketball with what he called his unsexy form of hoops. Jabbar didn't get the universal love from fans until the later part of his career, when he finally opened up to the world around him. But he was the most dominant and decorated player of his era. He won 3 national championships at UCLA, 6 NBA championships, 6 MVPs, 19 All-Star appearances, and was one of the 2 active players along with Dr. J to be a member of the NBA's 35th anniversary team. It wasn't until he was a Laker when people started to appreciate everything he did during his career. He was traded to LA in 1975, 2 years after Wilt Chamberlain had retired, and was coached by the logo Jerry West. At this point, his patented skyhook was the most famous shot in the world, but he was known for a lot more off the court. Like I stated in the 60s era, civil rights was a big issue during this time, and Kareem fought to make strides in social justice. He argued for better pay, labor protections, defended the LGBTQ and various religious communities, and this brought a huge eye on Jabbar that became more than just basketball. He was a great spokesperson for the NBA, one that the league didn't ask for, but got anyways. At the end of his career at age 42, no NBA player has scored more points, blocked more shots, won more MVP awards, played in more All-Star games, or logged more seasons. But during his and Dr. J's run, there was a shift between 2 young phenoms that brought a rivalry that was exactly what the NBA needed. In 1979, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, 2 rivals who battled against each other in college and authentically were paired against each other to start their careers, joined the league as the new faces of the NBA. In 1980, Julius Erving was still in the prime of his career and in the NBA Finals for the second time, but a rookie stopped him of any hopes of winning his first ring. That rookie, Magic Johnson, stepped up after superstar center Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went down with an injury and put up 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists at center and clinched the championship and Finals MVP. And this was a passing of the torch for the league at the time, and the start of a new era that might never be replicated again. Ervin Johnson gained the nickname Magic due to his creative and entertaining skill set on the ball as a big point guard. This was the perfect style to help lead the new era of the Lakers and owner Jerry Buss's vision of a fast-paced and high-tempo offense. And this was the start of the Showtime Lakers. With Buss's new outlook for the franchise, he introduced dancers, a live band, and lured high-profile Hollywood celebrities to the games to bring the brightest lights onto the new energy of the team. And what better staple of that than a young phenom nicknamed Magic? Johnson made those investments worth it. To this day, he's one of the best passers of all time. But the difference between him and the other great point guards is how he could get a crowd on his feet with just the type of passes he threw. He led the league in assists 4 times and is the NBA's all-time leader in average assists per game in both the regular season and the playoffs. He also holds the records for most career playoff assists and most career playoff triple-doubles. The court vision, flashiness, and creativity for his teammates paired with his energetic personality was a match made in heaven to contrast his arch-rival from the East Coast. As a rookie, Larry Bird won Rookie of the Year, First Team All-NBA, and was 4th in MVP voting. From day one, he was the embodiment of Celtics pride. He was confident, worked hard, and had that tough blue-collar mindset just like the Bostonians who filled the TD Garden to watch him play. And just like Magic, he was dynamic with the ball in his hands. From his electric passes or knockdown shots from the perimeter, fans were amazed nearly every time he stepped on the court. His dominance was showed in a complete opposite way than Magic. It was loud, but also in a subtle way that expressed his own personality. And his success early on forced the NBA to push him nationally the way they did. He won 3 straight MVPs before turning 30, made First Team All-NBA his first 9 years in the league to go along with multiple rings. Bird, surrounded by a superstar group of teammates, somehow stood out from the rest, making him one of the biggest athletes in the country. He was one of the biggest trash talkers in the league, and had a certain edge to him that caught the attention of everyone around him.
Larry Bird talked more trash on the basketball court than anybody I've ever played against.
Didn't talk trash to you, did
Oh
he?
my God, Bird talked trash to everybody.
Bird used to tell me, look here, man, I'm gonna go shoot this motherfucking jumper in your face right there in that corner. And it's gonna be your Christmas present. I'm gonna wrap it up and bust your head open.
Larry said, I'm insulted that they would put a sorry dude like you on me. He said, no, I don't even want to play no more. He would drop the ball and take a turnover.
His last shot, he said, in the trainer's lap, coming down the court. He shot this high rainbow. It goes in, Ricky bumps into him and knocks him on our trainer's lap. So it was exactly what he said.
Bird's trips to the finals often were against a guy he was forever linked to, further cementing their unique connection. These two careers set up one of the greatest storylines in NBA history that people still reminisce on to this day. Because they were directly tied against each other, not just due to their basketball skills, but because of the racial differences between them during the back end of heavy racial inequality in society. An African American who was super stylish with a big personality, playing for a flashy franchise nicknamed Showtime, against a white kid from a small farm town playing for a blue-collar franchise on the East Coast. And this is what made this rivalry so appealing. They each represented a different side of America and naturally forced people to choose a side. Before they joined the league, the NBA experienced low ratings and a declining interest in the sport, but this newly found competition brought national attention that they desperately needed. Two completely different lifestyles and backgrounds, both having one thing in common: elite skills on the court. Bird and Magic during the peak of their careers controlled nearly every major accolade in the NBA. 8 total championships, 5 finals MVPs, 6 regular season MVPs, every All-Star, and nearly every first-team All-NBA. It was the perfect situation for the NBA, the most authentic rivalry between two young stars on two of the biggest franchises in American sports. And they were pinned against each other from the start, but during a 1984 filming of a Converse advertisement that depicted them as enemies, Johnson and Bird became close friends.
I heard Converse made a pair of Bird shoes for last year's MVP.
Yep.
Well, they made a pair of Magic shoes for this year's MVP.
Okay, Magic, show me what you got.
The Bird shoe, the Magic shoe. Choose your weapon from Converse.
But as close as they were linked coming into the NBA, it was only fitting that their careers ended in similar ways: health issues. Magic had to retire due to an HIV diagnosis, and Bird retiring due to a back condition. But while all this was going on, the league once again was about to hit a gold mine when a kid from the University of North Carolina burst onto the scene, who many today consider the greatest basketball player of all time. Michael Jordan took over the league with his charisma on and off the court. During the peak of the Magic and Bird rivalry, MJ was quickly building a stardom for a franchise with some solid history early on. It started off in 1981 at the University of North Carolina, where Jordan dominated the college game. He won a national championship, ACC Rookie of the Year, First Team All-American twice, the Wooden Award, and a handful of other major awards. After being drafted 3rd overall in 1984, MJ completely took over the NBA as an individual. He was in MVP talks already as a rookie, and the attention he gained so early in his career was a sign of the status he'd reach a few years later. Larry Bird even said that rookie Mike was the best player he ever saw, and that he was one of a kind, and even compared him to Wayne Gretzky as an athlete, who's known as one of the greatest American athletes ever. He entered the league and signed the largest shoe deal at the time with Nike for $2.5 million, one that's known as the greatest sports business deal in history. His first shoe released a year after that, and Nike made more than $100 million by the end of 1985. The NBA then made a decision on one specific shoe that would push Jordan and Nike into the spotlight even more, increasing the rising star's popularity. They enforced a ban on Jordan's red and black colored shoe, and forced a fine of $5,000 per game if Mike wore it. Nike ran with the ban narrative that became their own kind of advertising campaign, selling $70 million worth of Air Jordans within 2 months of the sneakers' release.
On September 15th, Nike created a revolutionary new basketball shoe. On October 18th, the NBA threw them out of the game. Fortunately, the NBA can't stop you from wearing them. Air Jordans from Nike.
This partnership revolutionized athletes' brand deals, and MJ paved the way to become the face of athlete sponsorships that is still displayed today. And this wasn't the only non-basketball factor that Jordan separated himself from others. His personal style was equally as authentic and unique as his basketball skills. With his likability early on, home attendance both in Chicago and on the road with games he was a part of increased drastically. From dangling his tongue out of his mouth as he levitated towards the hoop, or his demanding energy from others around him, this swag made fans around the world gravitate to his style of play. It wasn't the first time the NBA saw a young black phenom with a big personality, but unlike Dr. J or Magic, Mike had this unique switch to him. But on the court, it wasn't until the back end of the 80s where MJ really placed himself as another face of the NBA alongside Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. From 1986 all the way into the 90s, he took over as the best scorer in the world as he won the scoring title 7 straight seasons and 10 out of 11 total years. One of the greatest scoring stretches the league has ever seen. The world got to witness 37 points per game, 35 points per game, 32.5 points per game, 33.6 a game, 31.5 a game, 30.1 a game, 32.6 points per game, 30.4 points a game, 29.6 a game, and 28.7 points a game. Even during this ridiculous offensive output, MJ paired this with elite defense, as he won Defensive Player of the Year along with an MVP and scoring title in 1987. His game really began to polish out. The three-point percentage doubled, the overall efficiency jumped, and Jordan looked nearly unstoppable on both sides of the floor. But his wars against the bad boy Pistons solidified how important he was to not only the Bulls, but the entire NBA. The Pistons, known for their gritty and aggressive style of play, ended Jordan and the Bulls season 3 years in a row from 1988 to 1990. But MJ didn't lead those series without raising hell for Detroit. He averaged 29.7 in those 3 series against the Motor City. In fact, he was so dominant leading up to these seasons that Detroit made their own Jordan rules.
This is what the Jordan rules were. On the wings, we're going to push him to the elbow, and we're not going to let him drive to the baseline. Number 2, when he's on top, we're going to influence him to his left. When he got the ball in the low post, we're going to trap him from the top.
What happens when he does make it this time?
That's when Lambeer and Mahorn would go up and knock him down to the ground.
Along with their already physical and grueling defense on Mike, the Pistons basically dared Jordan to single-handedly win games on constant double and triple teams. These rules worked initially, and the early failures against Detroit brought a lot of hate to MJ. But like they say, hate is another form of flattery, and this showed how much rival NBA fans expected from Mike early on. Many began to spew out that a scoring champion like Jordan could never lead his team to a title. But sooner rather than later, the Bulls got over that hump, and this was the breakthrough that MJ needed to be seen as the newest face of the NBA. It all started in 1991, when Jordan led the Bulls to a magical playoff run, only losing 2 games and capping it off by ending the last remains of Magic Johnson and the Showtime Lakers. And this was the beginning of the most dominant individual run in NBA history. At this point, Mike's head was completely shaved bald, which started a trend and made him noticeable by just a dark silhouette of his head, and adding a champion tag to his name, he became an icon. But the 1992 Olympics is where MJ officially got passed the torch as a face of the NBA. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were both facing retirement. The NBA had just finished with a bronze medal in '88, and FIBA finally changed the rules to where NBA players were allowed to participate. So what perfect time to push the league's most dominant player in front of the whole world than the Olympics? And he stood out like a sore thumb on what's known as the greatest basketball roster of all time. Rocking the number 9, Jordan got idolized like a pop icon in Barcelona. He He was second in scoring behind Charles Barkley, but where he made the most noise was out of the public eye, and in practice, where some of the most competitive basketball ever was played. His Hall of Fame teammates got to see a look into his unique killer mentality, and that this next era belonged to Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And that's exactly what happened. The Bulls won again in '93, and Jordan set a finals record for points per game with 41 in the 6-game series. By the end of Jordan and the Bulls' first three-peat, MJ had officially reached hero-like status around the world and gave the NBA a living legend in one of the biggest cities in the country. He reached his 9th shoe with Nike and helped the company earn over $3 billion in revenue. But after the loss of his father and questions about his gambling habits, he shocked the world by announcing his retirement to pursue baseball. This decision didn't last long, however, due to a labor dispute with the MLB. So MJ focused back on basketball and announced his return to the game with this famous letter saying, "I'm back." And he picked up right where he left off. 3 more scoring titles, 2 MVPs, but no more notable year than the 95-96 season. One of the greatest NBA teams ever assembled, the 95-96 Bulls capped off an MVP season for Michael Jordan with, at that time, the best record from a team ever with 72-10. A completely fresh new team than the past three-peat, Jordan and sidekick Scottie Pippen led a playoff run with only 3 losses the entire way. MJ once again averaged over 30 in the finals and won his 4th finals MVP on Father's Day, 3 years after the death of his dad. Mike displayed a unique competitive edge that the NBA hadn't seen at the time. Like in the 1997 finals against the Jazz, he gave the world one of the most gut-wrenching performances of all time. Game 5 in Utah, known as a flu game, was a 38-point performance from MJ while battling what some think was food poisoning and a 103-degree fever. He was given fluids and painkillers at halftime to help him score 17 in the second half and the finals clinching 3 with 25 seconds left. He said it was, quote, "the most difficult thing I've ever done. I almost played myself into passing out just to win a basketball game." This game officially immortalized Jordan's legacy. He was basically carried off the court surrounded by a raging Utah Jazz crowd. This shot clinched his 5th ring and 5th finals MVP, and he somehow topped this moment a year later. One of the most iconic shots of all time, MJ finished the prime of his career in a way that everyone dreams about as a kid. Known as the final shot, after Jordan got a clutch steal with 20 seconds left, down 1 point, up 3-2 in the series, he did this.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan, open, Chicago with the lead!
Arguably the biggest shot in NBA history, MJ further stamped his legacy with this bucket to win his 6th and final ring to complete the Bulls' second three-peat. Mike retired a year later before returning again with the Wizards in 2001, but he left the game knowing that he accomplished everything possible. He was the Rookie of the Year, 5-time NBA MVP, 6-time NBA champion, 6-time NBA Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 14-time NBA All-Star, 10-time All-NBA First Team, 3-time NBA All-Star MVP, 9-time All-Defensive First Team, 50th Anniversary All-Time Team, and won an NBA record 10 scoring titles. He holds the NBA records for career regular season scoring average with 30.1 points a game, and a career playoff scoring average with 33.4 points. Just one of the greatest playoff risers the game has ever seen. At the start of the 21st century, Jordan was named the 20th century's greatest North American athlete, ahead of guys like Babe Ruth and Muhammad Ali, further cementing himself as a cultural icon. A few years before his retirement, Jordan became a subsidiary of Nike, taking on its own brand identity. The brand continued to become a global staple, connecting basketball to everyday culture. There's no bigger trademark an athlete has than the bald head, tongue out, and superhero-like logo that Michael Jordan made his own. Kids grew up wanting to be like Mike, and his impact was felt upon every generation.
Like Mike, if I could be like Mike, I wanna be like Mike. Like Mike, if I could be like Mike.
And this is exactly why the NBA felt MJ's abrupt dismissal, because in '99, after his second retirement, the ratings fell to their lowest levels in 18 years. This started a brief period where the NBA juggled through two worldwide phenomenons, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. Shaq, who was arguably the most dominant big man of all time, reached his peak stardom once he came to LA and found success in 1999. He spent much of his early career in Orlando, dominating individually, but the key trend for each faces of the NBA is that they were winners, and Shaq just wasn't there yet. But in 1999, that all changed. He led the Lakers to 3 straight titles, winning Finals MVP in all 3 of them. He averaged nearly 30 points and won MVP in 2000, and carried those stats in MVP talks for the next half-decade. In each of these final series, he was easily the best player on the floor for both teams. With nationwide eyes on these matchups, Shaq put on a clinic and separated himself from the rest of his peers on the way to the last ever three-peat in pro sports. O'Neal was virtually unstoppable and the single most dominant physical force since Wilt Chamberlain. He was the first player without a perimeter presence to reach these heights in almost 30 years, showing how elite he became by staying strictly in the paint. But off the court, Shaq was under the spotlight just as much. He released 5 rap albums, one of them even going platinum. He had numerous brand deals, appeared in commercials for Disney and Reebok, and movies like Blue Chips, Kazam, and Steel in the late 90s. His status both on and off the court, paired with his rambunctious personality, was key for the NBA during the dead ball era and after the departure of Michael Jordan. And the unique partnership he created with young budding star Kobe Bryant. It wasn't too long until the shooting guard took over the reins as the biggest athlete in the NBA. Kobe started off his career somewhat slow in LA. He came off the bench for the first few years and was in the shadow of Shaq during the beginning of their championship run. But during that time, you could see the potential greatness and parallels between him and Michael Jordan. From their mid-range and post-up game to the killer mindset that rubbed people the wrong way, there were signs early on that Kobe was headed towards superstardom. And that moment was reached after a finals loss in 2004. Bryant took over the reins as the leader of the Lakers and carried the torch that Shaq held for a short period of time. He proved himself to be the best player in the world and separated himself mentally from the rest of the competition. With Shaq moving on to Miami, it was officially his team, and with the Lakers brand attached to himself, that further pushed him globally. And he took full advantage. He won back-to-back scoring titles, averaging over 30 in each, got an MVP along the way, and signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Nike. After paying $8 million to get out of his Adidas deal, Kobe signed with the biggest shoe company in basketball, and his first shoe released in 2006. He became the face of the brand that included Lebron and Vince Carter, and this was one of the first signs that Kobe was about to make that jump as a leader of the NBA. But no bigger statement made than scoring the second most points in NBA history. On January 22nd of 2006, Kobe put up 81 points on the Raptors in what was one of the greatest scoring performances ever. He shot 60% from the field and burned Toronto from every spot on the court. Raptors big man Chris Bosh said at one point, "We were just watching him shoot." The accomplishment stunned Kobe himself as he said, quote, "Not even in my dreams. That was something that just happened. It's tough to explain. It's just one of those things." Teammates and staff members were asking Bryant to sign autographed copies of the box score after the game. Even the Lakers announcer told fans to save their ticket stubs because of how significant this performance was. Lakers owner described the game as like watching a miracle unfold. To make it even sweeter, Bryant said how this was the one and only professional game his grandmother had seen live. And this moment shined a brighter light onto the NBA leading scorer. But like I said, to be the face, you have to lead your team to a chip, and he finally did that in 2009. But before climbing that mountain, Kobe was called upon to help avenge a bronze medal in 2004 with the 2008 Redeem team. He was named team captain, and similar to Michael Jordan in 1992, Kobe separated himself as the leader of the NBA while being surrounded by a bunch of Hall of Famers. He left his peers stunned by the way he carried himself and performed during the trip, and this was the start of his winning ways he brought to the league. And after a loss to the Celtics in the finals a few months prior, Kobe and the Lakers returned to the biggest stage in the sport and he single-handedly made sure LA didn't experience what they did the previous season. He averaged 32 points and 7 assists in the gentleman's sweep. Bryant and the Lakers followed this magical run with another ring and revived the best rivalry in the NBA with the Boston Celtics. A true classic of a series saw Kobe and crew once again face off against one of the first big threes in NBA history. After a grueling 7 games, he etched his name in purple and gold history by clinching back-to-back finals MVPs amongst the strongest conflict the league has seen. This was truly the last moment that Kobe carried the best in the world title, as his body and age caught up to him while other young phenomenons passed him up. But he left a lasting legacy that the NBA still feels today. From the killer frame of mind that was trademarked Mamba mentality to one of the greatest sneaker lines in sports history, he reached global status and helped push basketball to countries like China, where he created one of the biggest athlete fan bases in the world. Kobe created millions of new Laker fans and was everything that the NBA wanted from the face of the company. But that reign ended after the future face of American sports took over, LeBron James. But before LeBron became a cultural icon, he was just a kid from Akron, Ohio, gaining rapid popularity unlike anything ever seen. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school junior. His games were nationally televised with NBA scouts watching him play starting at age 13. Some thought he would be the #1 pick as a sophomore. This hype hadn't been seen in 40 years since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was arguably the greatest American sports prospect ever, and produced every year on a franchise that was desperate for a spark. Now everyone knows LeBron led the way for one of the greatest draft classes in 2003, but it wasn't until midway into his illustrious career when he became the true standalone face of the NBA. But there were plenty of moments where he showed the potential greatness among other legends, like the 2005 All-Star Game, where he was mic'd up and showed the country his competitive edge surrounded by other stars. Or in 2006, the night before Kobe's legendary 81-point game, LeBron put up 51 points on the second night of a back-to-back against the Jazz to become the youngest player to ever score 5,000 points. Or in Game 5 of the 2007 Eastern Conference Finals against the experienced Pistons, the young LeBron strung off the final 25 points for the Cavs to not only put his total at 48, but win the game, and ultimately the series to reach his first finals. But the big shift happened in 2010, when the back-to-back MVP made a shocking decision live on TV in front of the whole world.
The answer to the question everybody wants to know. LeBron, what's your decision?
In this fall, man, it's very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
LeBron was headed to South Beach to team up with future Hall of Famers Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. But even with this talent, his teammates knew he was a go-to guy. Wade even admitted that he recognized LeBron's abilities and had to take a step back and allow James to lead. And Bron completely took off. He won back-to-back MVPs again, and back-to-back championships to cement his greatness before turning 30. But he was ready for a new challenge, and returned back home to Cleveland to finish what he started. And that challenge was something nobody expected: Steph Curry. A player that no one saw becoming as big as he is now, Curry entered his name right next to LeBron in a very unique way. Steph brought something new to the NBA with his dynamic shooting. The league of course has seen incredible shooters over time, but nothing like what he could do. The era of small guards being a true threat to an opposing team looked to be over, until he fine-tuned both his body and his game. It ironically started in 2014, the first year LeBron was back in Cleveland. Curry won his first MVP, and both teams cruised to the finals to face off against one another for the first time. And both stars put on a show. LeBron dominated, averaging over 35 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists, and Curry averaging 26 on nearly 40% from 3. But Steph was just surrounded by more talent, and this even brought the conversation of giving LeBron Finals MVP despite losing the series, something that's only happened once with Jerry West in 1969. Then the next season came, with two of the most iconic achievements to happen, led by the two greats. The Warriors broke the 95-96 Bulls record for most wins in a season with 73, and looked to easily walk away with their second straight title. They had the Cavs down 3-1 going back home, until LeBron flipped the switch.
James drives and easily finishes. James jumper. Again, LeBron James. Spades gives him some room. James knocks it down. James fakes. James drives. James finishes and the foul. And a chance for a three-point play to tie the game. James with 4 to shoot. Gonna have to knock up a 3. And does. LeBron James with the left hand. Steps back, he tries another 3. That's good. LeBron James from downtown. He's 4 of 6.
That was special. That was special. That will go down in the all-time greatest performances in finals history.
As you go home, again, your season will be hanging in the balance. What must travel back to Cleveland with you?
Well, we're just happy we got another day. That's all we can ask for.
Chased by LeBron James, poked away from behind, then releases. And Curry has to back off as James throws it down. Irving fakes, drives. James on the throwdown. This is reminiscent of the Game 3 start. James puts up the 3 and nails it. LeBron James from downtown. James, a crossover, the layup off the glass. His 11th of the game, finds James. James on the attack, left-handed once again, lays it in. Throws it ahead to Smith. Smith, alley-oop to James. Wow! Came close to fouling out there. Shot clock winding down. James has to put it up. Puts it in. Iguodala trying to stay in front. Falling away. It's good. 36 for LeBron James for Cleveland. Curry blocked by James. McAdoo's in the game. James Jones gets off the bench. He's going to come in. James finishing touches on a magnificent performance. 41 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 block shots. And you see the list. Back-to-back 40-point games in the finals. Again, just staggering numbers from LeBron James.
We've been able to beat a great team, 2 straight games to force a Game 7. And I can't wait.
Pass right through the hands of Curry. James, the two-handed slam. James drives in hard. Nice adjustment with the left hand. James on the drive. Foul. Layup. Counted and one. LeBron James, another attack of the basket. Livingston played him well. James was just better. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with a rejection.
He led the Cavs to 3 straight wins to become the first team to ever come back from 3-1, and gave his childhood team their first ever title. This game became the 3rd most watched finals game ever with 31 million viewers. Both 2015 and 2016 series were the highest rated finals series of the modern era, mainly due to these 2 superstars' pull amongst the sports world. This rivalry was perfect for the NBA. The 2 biggest talents in the sport dominating in completely different ways, matching up every year on the biggest stage. They met again for the next 2 years, but this time, Kevin Durant came along to somewhat steal the spotlight from the 2 stars. KD had continuously been putting up elite stats in OKC, but could never translate it into winning. He was already a 4-time scoring champ and MVP winner, but he was ready for a change of scenery. After blowing his own 3-1 lead to Curry and the 73-9 Warriors, Durant made as shocking of a decision that LeBron made years prior by joining Steph in Golden State. And he completely took over as the best player on the team, and arguably the best player in the world. The Warriors won 2 more rings with Durant, and he cemented his name amongst these 2 greats as the leaders of the 2010s. And ever since that 4 years finals run between the Cavs and Warriors, these 3 consistently stayed at the top of the league. LeBron single-handedly controlled the East for over a decade and made the conference finals the LeBron Invitational. He made cities like Toronto his own, or what they now like to call LeBronto, and even made enemies out of the entire upper Northeast because of the damage he used to do to the Celtics on a regular basis. Curry also had some ownership in a different city, with H-Town being his second home once playoff time hit. He also took the souls out of arenas with some of his one-of-a-kind bombs from deep and elite shot making off the dribble. And KD never had a stable home throughout his career, but the headaches he caused during some of his patented scoring runs dropped the jaws of fans everywhere. Both LeBron and Steph have won another ring well into their 30s, and Durant, despite being on multiple teams, has continued his elite production as one of the greatest scorers of this generation. Those three, especially Brown and Curry, have dominated the spotlight and held tight to the torch, all while being surrounded by some of the best upcoming talent the game has ever seen. And being the face of the league comes with some requirements, and although winning and individual success helps that case, no better attribute than longevity, something that these three legends all possess. But for the past few years, the NBA has tried to find that next rising player to step up and take this title away from any of these older guys, but it just hasn't happened. Because like I said earlier, a transitional period is happening right now, and I believe that this past Olympics was a true storybook ending to the glorious run that these three had. Steph, LeBron, and KD proved once again that they still move the needle in this sport, and that it'll stay this way until they call it quits. Because matchups between any of these three are the most watched games of the season, and the moments we've gotten from them over the past decade attribute to how big this game has become. Children have grown up wanting to shoot like Steph, and his impact has finally been seen among every level of basketball. Pros have wanted the longevity and individual dominance like LeBron, because there were two versions of the king, regular season Bron and playoff Bron. He ran the Eastern Conference for over a decade and put fear into opponents regardless of the pieces around him. And KD has upcoming players wanting to model their offensive game to resemble the easiness that he displays. But with these careers coming to an end, who is in the best position to be next in line at the top? Something that each of the past faces had in common is that they were all winners and dominated for an extended period of time that others couldn't imagine doing. They reached heights that their peers could never touch and had a signature both on and off the court that fans talk about decades later. There's two levels of players that we can look at who can potentially cover this checklist and take the torch after LeBron, Steph, and KD call it a career. The first level is a group of veterans who are still in their prime but past the young stage of their careers, Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo. These two have the best case for taking over the league due to their resumes and unique dominance. They each combined for 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, 5 regular season MVPs, and a handful of All-NBAs and All-Stars. Every year you expect them to be in MVP consideration and in the hunt for a championship. And since they're on the older side, it might be a short period of time where they actually run the league, but it would be the perfect bridge between now and the future for this next level of superstars to take over. The few young stars that have these traits or are on their way to accomplishing these is Shea, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, and Victor Wembanyama. My 2 favorites who are immediately taking over this label will be Tatum and Shea. Both players are in great positions of their careers, both individually and team-wise. They're on 2 of the best teams in the league and potentially may meet in the finals, which could be the stepping stone for a new era of the NBA. Shea is on pace to win his first MVP, and the narratives around him right now are very positive. Fans have all agreed on how elite he is offensively and are already comparing his current season to some of the greats. He's developed into one of the greatest offensive talents in recent memory, and he's brought back a style of play that many fans have been begging for. He has the energy off the court that people love, with his new shoe and style that people like to call aura. But the only thing he's really missing is team success. He's only won 1 playoff series in his 7-year career, so now that he's a part of arguably the best team in the league, a deep run this spring and this summer is expected. And for Jason Tatum, despite what some may think, he's developed into one of the best all-around players in the world. He may never be the front runner for the MVP due to the talent of his team, but he consistently dominates in every aspect of the game. He's elite on the ball, on the wing, and even defensively guarding 1 through 5. And one of the things that Tatum has going for his case is that he's hated, but contrast that hate with success. Every global star in the NBA was deeply hated during some point of their careers, but eventually, history was very kind to their resumes. I believe JT is on that trajectory. At only 27, he's an NBA champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 6-time All-Star, 4 straight first-team All-NBAs, 5 conference finals appearances, most playoff points before turning 27, most points in a Game 7 in NBA history, and a plethora of other groups that he's a part of. And the big excuse people give for Tatum's success is the team he was drafted to. But we need to remember that Magic Johnson was drafted to a near 50-win team who already had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Kobe was drafted to a 53-win team who already had Magic Johnson. So it's not like this situation hasn't happened before. People love to bring up how he doesn't have an exciting personality or have the aura that an NBA icon is supposed to have.
Think about Magic Johnson. You can see the smile. Think about Michael. You can see that cocky grin. Think about LeBron. You can see the imagery. Pre-game, chalk. You can close your eyes and there's images with stars. Close your eyes now and do it with Tatum. I don't see anything.
But he does everything the right way off the court and isn't always loud or arrogant that some stars tend to be. I believe that in the next few years, the world won't be able to deny what Tatum will have accomplished, and we'll have no choice but to include him at the top of the NBA's totem pole. But after those two, I see a pathway for Luka Doncic to be in this role as well. Everyone recognizes how talented Luka is offensively, and he has past team success to back his stats. I think that the trade to the Lakers may be the greatest thing to ever happen to Luka's career, because he's now in the biggest basketball market in the world, and LA breeds global stars, so he's back behind the machine. Being a potential successor to LeBron will give Doncic all the spotlight, and create a new fan base for himself that he may have never been able to gain in Dallas. This brings a great opportunity for both him and the NBA, but he needs to stay healthy and find a way to reach that mountaintop of the finals again to help his case. These vets all have a great chance of being that next face, but there's 2 other young stars that I think will also enter these convos when the time comes. Victor Wembanyama and potentially Cooper Flagg both have a great chance of holding that torch with the next great faces of the NBA. Wemby is hands down the greatest American sports prospect ever, and in year 2 he's already shown some flashes that we have never seen. He averaged 24, 11, and 3 blocks, made his first All-Star game, and was well on his way to being All-NBA and winning Defensive Player of the Year before his unfortunate blood clot issue. And being in San Antonio also helps his case due to the rich history they've grown there. But he needs to pair this elite talent with success in the loaded Western Conference. But for Cooper Flagg, this take may be a little premature, but I do think he can reach the level of these current young stars. He's a favorite to win National Player of the Year as a freshman, and has a two-way skill set that I believe will translate from day one of his NBA career. Flagg averages nearly 20 points and 7.5 rebounds, can score from all 3 levels, and is one of the best defenders in the country. His versatility is what makes him such an interesting prospect, because at almost 6'10", he can play on the wing or as a small ball 5-man. The most important thing for him at this point is what situation he gets drafted to. There's definitely some spots that if Flagg gets taken, it may stun his development. I believe the best franchises for him that are in contention for the first pick are the Wizards or the Nets. These are 2 of the worst teams in the league, but have either a great foundation or market, which would help Flagg develop at his own pace with pretty much his own team. But there are some teams with a lot of talent that may get lucky and fall to the first pick that would work for him too, like the Sixers or the Pelicans. The NBA desperately needs another American superstar, and Flagg could be that piece. But going back to some players already in the league, a lot of people tend to bring up guys like Anthony Edwards in these conversations, but I think he's way too far for this group right now to even be considered. Ant's one of the best young talents in the league, but he's not even close to being as complete or polished as guys like Tatum, Shea, or Luka. He does have the off-court and personality effect going for him, which may set himself apart from the others, but like I've said time and time again, on-court results matter, and he's just not there yet. But he's only 23, so there's still a lot of time left. So as of right now, There's no leader for the future face of the NBA, and it'll be that way until someone takes it, just like the rest of the greats did. And regardless of who carries this torch for the future of the league, the game will be in a great spot. Whether they're American, European, or Canadian, there's talent everywhere, and fans and NBA spokespeople may not like it, but this is the era of the foreigners, and it's completely okay for the face of an American league to be from outside of the States. This will only promote growth for the game outside of the borders, which is exactly what the NBA wants long term. But it's a new era for the game of basketball, and it'll be very exciting to see what comes next. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'll see y'all soon. Peace.